Hey everybody, welcome back to Board Game Blunder. My name is Zee Garcia, and today we're going to be talking about two-player games. It's a season for love. It's right around Valentine's Day, and so I thought it would be an appropriate topic to tackle in this episode. Not to say, of course, that every game we're going to be covering here is a nice and fluffy, lovey-dovey kind of game. We're going to be talking about a lot of different styles of games, big, epic confrontation games, weird two-player abstractish kind of games. We're going to be talking designers. We're going to have interviews for you. We're going to be talking about deduction games. Lots of things as long as they tie into it being for two players. And so, thanks, of course, for joining us as always. And enjoy the show. Here we go.
A pesar de que la luna no brille, mañana me dará igual solo verte y reír es lo que me feliz. Mi alma.
Alina, I have something really special to say to you. Alina, will you play darky with me?
Oh yes! Yes! Quite recently we discovered Cosmos two-player series. These are quite many games that were published originally in Germany by Cosmos, and they're all exclusively for two players. We have only few of them from the full collection that we're going to show to you as well. They are all really different.
Yeah, I want to mention two games that we haven't played yet, but we have already. First of all is Perry Rodan, the Cosmic League. It's a pick-up and delivery game. I don't know much about it. We're going to try it. That's here. And then Caesar and Cleopatra. It says here that they kissed and they fought. I think it's an ideal game for me and Alina. So we're going to play this one as well. Now,
because we kiss and we fight.
But let's skip that and go to the games that we have played. And the first game is Hellas. It's an area control game. In ancient Greece, you are discovering lands and trying to conquer them. Whoever will conquer, I think, 6 temples or cities is the winner of the game. You have all sorts of cards that give you bonuses to fighting, give you some special abilities. It's a really cool and different combat-based game in a two-player series. The second game is Hera and Zeus. You each represent a family of the particular god, and it's a combat-based card game where you have cards in rows and columns, and you try to outsmart your opponent, bluff, set traps, and fight with each other to find and rescue a hostage. Whoever does that first is the winner of the game. It's a really cool game with cool artwork, lots of mythological creatures, cool special abilities on the cards. It's language independent as well, so I really recommend Hera and Zeus.
Third game we're going to talk about is Kahuna. It's a small game, abstract game where you have lots of small islands and you try to gain control over as many as possible by building the bridges and destroying opponents' bridges. It's fast-paced tactical game where you need to adapt to it constantly while it progresses. So, small abstract game, Kahuna.
Another game is Asante. It's a fast-paced tactical card game where you are representing merchants who are trying to get most gold. You are buying goods cheap to sell them for higher price, but you also have lots of different special ability cards. You can mess with your opponent. It's a lot of take that moments. It's just really cool, in your face, and just
beautiful artwork.
Beautiful artwork, yeah.
The last game we'll show you today is Targi. This takes place in African tribe. It's worker placement that might sound quite plain. You travel around in desert, you try to gather resources and trade them to become richer. But the unique thing in the game is the way you gather the actions. You have cards put in grids, and the way you get actions is by the places where you put your workers and by their intersections. It's not that easy to get actions you want, so you have to play smartly. It's not that easy, and it's really intriguing the way it works.
So, Target, a really cool game. These games are great for couples, although beware. These games are competitive and confrontational. You have Hellas, a straight combats. You have Asante that has peaceful merchant theme, but a lot of take that moments. And there's an exception. Targi is the one that is more of a classical era, doesn't have that too much of that confrontational aspect to the game.
What we find surprising in all these series that all of the games they manage to make different. And although the theme or mechanic might sound plain, they actually manage to put something really unique and different in each of the game. They feel fresh, although they have been published a long time ago and in Germany. Still, they're really worth game.
Yeah, it's quite hard to find them in the shops, but if you will find them somewhere for a good price, buy them and try them, definitely.
And we've heard a rumor that they're going to be reprinted. Some of them are already. Let's just hope all of them will be.
Yeah. So see you in the next Blender. Bye bye.
Hello, welcome to Boards and Crafts, a place for quick tutorials with snacks and crafts inspired from games, for games, and all about board games. One of my favorite games to play two-player with my fiance is Love Letter, and today I thought it would be fun to show you guys how to make some unique upgraded components for this game. Let's get started! The supplies that you'll need for this craft include oven-baked clay, a baking sheet, clay tools, or a plastic knife if you prefer, and painting supplies, which usually for me include acrylic paint, paintbrushes, a water cup, and something to put the paint on. The tokens of affections are love letters that are sent to the princess each day. Whoever wins the round has actually had their love letters sent to the princess. So I thought it'd be fun to make these tokens mini love letters. In order to do this, I rolled out the clay and cut it up into little squares, and then made it look like a little envelope, and took a little piece of clay and made a little circle and created a seal on it. I did this 13 times and then stuck it in the oven according to the way that the oven-baked clay's box instructed me. After I got done with that, I took it back out, let it cool a bit, and then painted a couple of layers of white acrylic paint in order to have a solid base, and then continued on to paint it the colors that I wanted, which in this case were red and pink and some more white. After I let all of this dry, I painted some varnish on it, that way my paint would not get all over my letters. And that's it! If you guys have any ideas for tasty treats or creative crafts, comment below or tweet at me at RCRobot. Thank you guys for watching, I hope that you have a great weekend.
Hello friends of the Blend. Today we're talking two-player games. Here I have Lionheart, published in 1997 by Parker Brothers. This is a two-player customizable medieval warfare game. Let me set this up and show you how it works. So this is what the game board would look like set up. There's only a couple rules of setting up the game, is that the king here has to be on the shield, which is on the middle of the board here. And then the rest of your bases can go anywhere on the first two rows, any way you choose. Now, these bases, you can take these pieces off and customize your own army, but right now I have one of everything just for example's sake. So the game comes with peasants, infantry, heavy infantry, archers, knights, and mercenaries. There's 2 actions you can do per turn, and there's only 3 things you can do. You can move a figure, you can rotate a figure, or you can attack. Okay, the move action. When you're moving your figures, the guys on foot can only move 1 square, whichever way they're facing. The guys on horseback, which is the knights and the king, could move whichever way they're facing, but they can go as far as they want as long as there's nothing in their way. Now to attack, you want to be either right in front of your opponent, side, or back. And what you're going to do is count the figures on the base and roll that many dice. Now for the infantry here, you need to roll battle axes, as well as the heavy infantry and the knights and the king. The peasants here are going to roll hits on the battle axes and the arrows. Now the archers attack just a little bit differently here. What the archers are going to do is they're going to attack on 9 squares directly in front of them. And they can also shoot over your own bases here. And their hits are the arrows. Now to eliminate figures off of the base, they each have their own hit points here. The infantry have 1 hit point. That means if you get 1 hit, you take 1 off, 2 hits, take another 1 off, so on and so forth. The peasants also have 1 hit point each. The mercenaries have 1 hit point. The archers have 1 hit point. The heavy infantry takes 2 hit points to eliminate each one, as does the knights and the king. Now to win the game, you have to either eliminate the king or eliminate all the other pieces, just leaving the king. First person that does that wins the game. This game is fast to play and easy to teach. Now what I like about this game is the playing pieces here, that you can customize them to any way that suits your strategy. Also, I've gotten people that don't normally play board games to play this game because it kind of resembles chess. Well, that's all the time I have for now. Join me next time when I showcase another great board game from the past. And Jackson, this one's for you. May your rolls be high.
Hey folks, in today's 2-for-1 we are tackling a little good card game that would play well at a date or something like that. And so I wanted to show you a couple of games I think could be good ideas for that sort of setting, but then one that I think really encapsulates the ideas in both and just makes for a better package overall. So my first game here is Trambon, a 2-player, like I said, card game in which you are collecting sets, you are being very careful with your timing as to when you score, what you score, and trying to come out ahead. Every game that I'm going to be showing you is very much about timing, but they are all made of cards that are quite simply colors and numbers or a combination thereof. This one's got some really neat turn-to-turn angst, but overall the look and the theme are just a little too boring, I think, for it to make for a really interesting sort of getting to know each other kind of game. Just a little something to facilitate the talking. And so we need something with a better theme here. Something that has a better theme. Lost Cities, old classic. Everybody has tried this, and if you haven't, then I do recommend you do. Just wait a couple of seconds, because I'm going to tell you about another game that I think you could replace this with. This one will have the big, gorgeous cards. This one's going to have a nice, attractive theme. It's going to be easy to teach. It's going to display well, make for a nice conversation piece. However, the problem I have with this one is that I think it's a little too mathy, and it's going to drag down the whole endeavor just when you get to all the scoring and having to explain how the scoring works and all of that. And so we have a nicely themed, very attractive game with a little too much scoring, and then one that's tactically rich, but the theme's kind of a drab theme, and it's just not going to be very captivating on that front alone. And so you combine these two, and what I think you should get instead is Jaipur here. Jaipur, not only does it come in a smaller box, which makes it great for traveling, but it's going to give you a really pretty, attractive theme, gorgeous looking cards, and the game is still tactically rich. It's still very much about knowing when to play what cards, but the scoring is very simple. You collect tokens. Those tokens tell you right on there how much they are worth. And this one you could even actually, technically you're supposed to play several rounds, but you can play a single round and it's shorter than both the other games I just showed you. So a really great game. You can play multiple rounds for a full experience. You can play a single round just to kill a few minutes while you're waiting for your coffee or something like that. A great package overall. Highly recommend it. I think it's going to make a good first impression if you are out there with a possible significant other on a little date, something real low-key. So there you got it. Jaipur is my 2-for-1 recommendation.
Happy Valentine's Day, everybody, from MAGGIBOT. And today we're talking about couples games and two-player games and things that work well within couples. For me and my partner personally, we really enjoy playing Magic the Gathering together. Magic offers 20 years worth of cards to choose from, and you can have a lot of creative and strategic fun trying to find cards that work well together and staying competitive against your partner who's also constantly trying to one-up you. The game can be a little intimidating for someone who's never played. I'd still highly encourage anyone that's interested to learn, but I often find that board gamers think of Magic the Gathering as a money sink when they're used to spending their money on lots of different games. That being the case, we talked to you about a few LCGs that I happen to love. I feel like LCGs give you that same learning over time and studying type meta to your gaming with your partner, but they have a more controlled buy-in and just an easier way of budgeting your time. The first one came out last year. That was Ashes: Rise of the Phoenixborn. It is a really fun game utilizing some neat dice mechanics and a very cool combat system. Ashes also has the ability to be gorgeous, and it plays a little like having a commander in Magic, where instead of just having things that are coming randomly out of your deck, things are built around a specific trope in the game. Really fun, really interesting. Looking forward to the first expansion coming out soon. The next one I really dived into was Netrunner from Fantasy Flight. This is an old Richard Garfield game like Magic, but in this one it's asymmetrical and 2 players. Players are either bluffing and playing control, or they are playing aggro, hasty, crazy stuff. Really fun to sink your teeth into, and again, built around these tropes with a really good deck building system that keeps you interested, but still sort of restricted from making stupid broken combos. And lastly, the other one that I feel kind of died out after a little while was Doomtown from AEG. The Doomtown Reloaded is the Deadlands card game remade into an LCG. And of all the games I talked about today, it has the highest learning curve for your first game. Doomtown has a million mechanics and a lot of rules, and you need to memorize them to play properly. So I feel like that has scared some people off. Otherwise, the game is really fun, and if you like deck building like I do in Magic, building a deck for Doomtown is very difficult. You need cards that work well together within the game, and also cards that make interesting poker hands the way you need to do your duels. So it has kind of a 2-step process to building a deck, and that makes it interesting and different from most games. I hope y'all have a beautiful Valentine's Day. I'm off to see John Waters out here in Seattle, and I'll see y'all next time.
Hey guys, Tiff here, and this week we're talking about 2-player games. As you can imagine, we don't have much couples gaming going on in my middle school board game club, but we do occasionally have stragglers that don't make it down in time to start games with everyone else. When this happens, I find that 2-player games can really come in handy, and one of the ones I like best for my kids is La Phantom de la Opera. La Phantom de la Opera is a 2-player only asymmetric deduction game by Bruno Cathala and Ludovic Montblanc. It's in the Mr. Jack series of games, but with a few changes and a much more family-friendly theme that goes over well with my orchestra students. In the game, one player will take on the role of a disgruntled opera house employee trying to frighten away La Carlotta, the resident diva, by pretending to be the Phantom of the Opera. The other player, of course, is the investigator trying to discover who the elusive Phantom is before the frightened diva leaves and the show is cancelled. Starting out, there are 8 characters randomly placed throughout the opera house. Each round, 4 cards matching these characters are revealed. The start player gets to move one of these characters first, followed by the second player who gets to move 2 in a row. The final character is moved by the start player again. Each character also has a unique ability that can be activated when they're selected. These abilities can allow the characters to move in special ways. For example, Meg Geary is the only character that can use the secret passages for her movement. Some of the abilities allow multiple characters to be moved, like with Monsieur Richard, who can trade places with another character. In addition to the characters, there's a padlock token on the board that can block passage through the rooms and is only moved using Madame Geary's special ability. There's also a blackout token that causes a room to be hidden from the investigator. This token is only moved with Joseph Bouquet's special ability. At the end of each round, you check to see if the Phantom can appear. This can only occur if he's alone in a room or in a room with the blackout token. If the Phantom is in an illuminated room with several characters, he can't appear. In that case, all of the characters that are alone can be flipped over and eliminated as suspects. If the Phantom is able to appear, you move La Carlotta one space closer to the exit, plus one additional space for each character that's still a suspect. The investigator wins if they can narrow down the suspect list to one character before La Carlotta reaches the exit. The Phantom wins if they're able to remain hidden until La Carlotta is scared away. I think Le Phantom de la Opera is the best of the Mr. Jack games for kids because the theme feels exactly like a Scooby-Doo episode. The deduction element is engaging and the rules are very simple to learn. It does take a round or two to understand how best to use the character's abilities, but luckily the game usually plays in under 30 minutes, so it's easy to play more than one game in a session. I especially like that you can adjust the difficulty level by moving the starting position of La Carlotta. So if your investigator player is playing for the first time, you just move her over a few extra spaces to the left and bam, the game is balanced. It's a perfect way to introduce new players to the deduction genre, so check it out and I'll see you back next time.
Hi, welcome to the Bargain Bin. It's Benny here, and alongside me is Kirsten.
Hey!
And today we're talking about games that will make or break your date night. Gaming's a big part of Kirsten and I's marriage. We love finding a new game to put down on the kitchen table at night, either to wind down or take games on the go with us to kind of spice up a date night if we're just sitting at a restaurant eating. So we love gaming to be involved in our day-to-day life, and two-player games especially. And so today we have one that we think will make your date night and one that might break it if you're not careful. So I'll let Kirsten tell you about the one that will make your date night.
The game that we chose that can make your date night is called Sylveon. Sylveon is a cooperative tower defense game that was published by JonGetsGames in 2015. This game has the same designer and artist as another one of our favorite games, Onirim. It is a 1 to 2 player game with an MSRP value of $29.99, but we were able to find this game on Cool Stuff Inc. for $16.49. In this game, players are working together to prevent a forest fire. Each turn, the fire moves closer and closer to the forest, and players are going to use different items such as fountains to help extinguish the fire before it reaches it. This game reminded us a lot of another cooperative game that we've had a lot of fun playing in our relationship, which is Castle Panic. However, Sylveon comes in at a slightly lower price range, and with the different advanced rules and expansions that it offers, it gives you a higher level of difficulty as well. The cooperative aspects of this game make it the perfect game for a date night. There's no sweeter game than a game where you and your significant other are working together as a team. It also has a really fun theme and some really amazing artwork.
And then that brings us to the game that can break your date night. And that's Pixel Tactics. Pixel Tactics is by Level 99 Games. It has an MSRP value of $14.99, but you can find this easily for under $10. I think I got my copy for $9. So Pixel Tactics puts two players against each other. You have two identical decks, but you're going to be using the cards in different ways depending on how you put them on this battlefield. You'll be casting spells at each other, shooting each other with ranged attacks, hitting each other with melee attacks, and the ultimate goal of trying to kill their leader. So as you can kind of tell, just the natural competitiveness of the game might put some tension in that date night. And so we've had a lot of fun with it, but there have been a couple times where tensions got a little high as we're battling it out. and you're watching the other person clear the corpses off their battlefield. So it's just really fun in that regards. It is fun, and of course we say break your date night in jest, but these are two great games that we think fit into any date night and are in that great bargain price range. So if you get a chance to check them out, we'd love to hear what you have to say in the comments below, and we can't wait to see you next time on the Bargain Bin. Stay a friend of the blend. See you next time.
See ya.
Hey everybody, my designer spotlight this week is on one of my favorite two-player designers, and that is Richard Borg. Early on in his career, he did a nice little card game which was very much like a Stratego but in cards, and it was called Hera and Zeus. That was a great little card game. I really liked it. It felt like Stratego but playing cards. There's a new version coming out called Thunder and Lightning, which is Thor and Loki, which you'll be able to find soon. So if you heard of Hera and Zeus, you can find that one. He also did the Commands and Color system. This is what he's known for. In the Commands and Color system, you have Battle Cry, which is the Civil War version. You have Memoir 44, the World War II version. You have The Great War just came out. It's the World War I version. You have Command and Colors Ancient, Command and Colors Napoleonics. You have Battle Lore, which is the fantasy one. There's so many of them. It's a great little system. You have pieces on the board. You play cards to determine which sides move. And in the same realm, even though he didn't design it, would be Queen's Gambit as well. So his system, other people were inspired by this system and decided to make other games of it. But the system's a great system. Every version of it works well. Memoir 44 is my favorite of them. And basically what happens is you're taking them, I'm going to play a left flank, I'm going to play a right flank, and when I do it, then those pieces move, and then you roll dice and determine what gets killed and not. But it's a great, simple two-player war game. And I know it's not really a heavy war game. It's a very light game, so don't think of it as a war game, even though it is doing historic battles. That is the Command and Color series. Again, it's Battle Cry, Great War, Memoir 44, Battle Lore, Command and Colors. Amazing game, amazing designer. I would definitely, if you could find at least one of them, go get one for your collection, and that's Richard Borg.
Well, it's finally Valentine's Day.
I know, it's so nice to get out away from the kids, just the two of us.
I know, we finally got to get dressed up and go out.
You look so lovely this evening.
Well, thank you.
How about you go ahead and pour the wine? Boxed wine. How gauche.
Au contraire. I think viticulture is quite classy addition to any romantic evening.
Let's check it out. Viticulture is an amazing example of a worker placement game. As much as I would love to go over a full review of this game, fortunately, we only have time for a quick overview. The goal of the game is to get the most victory points. But that's not really the goal. The goal is to be the first one to 20. But that's not really the goal either. It's the one that has the most victory points at the end of the turn after the first person gets to 20. You do this by planting vines in your field. Then you harvest those vines into grapes. Then you turn those grapes into wine. Then you sell that wine for victory points. But how, you ask, do you do those things? You do it by going to various spots on the board. That's where the worker placement part comes in. In fact, they have a handy-dandy little cheat sheet off to the side of the board that tells you exactly what you do and when you do it and how you do it. And that's viticulture. But wait, you ask, how do you do the two-player version of this game? Well, that's simple. You only get to go to that one spot. So there you have it, Viticulture, an amazing two-player game. But it does play up to 4 players. So in the spirit of the evening, I feel we should present a couple of our games that were designed to be played by 2 people.
War of the Ring. An amazing fantasy game that is Lord of the Rings trilogy in a box. Can't beat it for a 2-player game.
It is a really awesome 2-player game, but I think it could be beat by Star Trek Fleet Captains. It is the Star Trek universe encapsulated in a box.
Fantasy.
Sci-fi is better.
Fantasy.
Sci-fi.
Fantasy! I'm sorry, sweetie. I could never be mad at you. Cool catchphrase!
Hello folks, welcome to Corner Chat. Today I'm here with Mike Fitzgerald at the Haunted Game Cafe in Fort Collins, Colorado, and we're talking 2-player games. You may know Mike from games like Baseball Highlights, 2045, and many other fantastic titles. Thanks for joining us today, Mike.
Thank you, Mark. This is really fun. I love being in Colorado now and all the gaming activity that goes on.
Just moved here.
Just moved here in July, yeah.
That's
so
fantastic, and we're very happy to have you here.
No, I'm happy too.
Well, you know, we're talking 2-player games.
Yeah, my favorite thing.
You're right, yeah. So what kind of design challenges do you face when you're working between 2-player versus multiplayer games?
Well, a lot less, for me, a lot less design challenges with a 2-player game than with a multiplayer game. Because games, to me, a competitive game is 2 sides. It's one person or team's ideas against the other person. So you're able to make things where, okay, if I do this, it's going to affect my opponent. He's going to have to respond to that.
Right.
When I'm in a multiplayer game, or let's say multi-sided game, once you do 3 or more people, and they each have a different perspective, then I'm not influencing both opponents.
Right.
It depends on the game, but I'm usually influencing that person that's going to come next in some way, and I'm having all these other things to calculate. So it becomes less pure to me as far as a competitive game where one person can outthink or outperform the other person. Nothing wrong with those games, but as a design, I think they're more challenging because you have to deal with things like Kingmaker and politics and people being upset because you do something that helps the other person and not them, or those kind of things. A lot of wonderful games, obviously, and but I do think it's a harder design challenge than doing something with the 2 sides.
Okay, so for 2-player games, then what are some of your strategies that you enjoy most about 2-player games?
Well, if you can make them a little bit asymmetrical, I think that's where the gold is, in a sense, especially in our modern hobby gaming.
Right.
It's so much fun to think, well, I'm going to take this side. A good example that just came out is Raptor by Bruno Cathala and Bruno Faduti. It is asymmetrical, and you really have to play differently from each side. I tried to do that in Baseball Highlights, just in the sense that your team is going to be different from the other guy's team. So I think that's really where you can replay. I mean, there's a knock with 2-player games sometimes when you sort of played it out. If it doesn't offer enough variety or enough things going on that are different play to play, I can understand that. So we try, I think a lot of us designing these things now are trying to build in more asymmetrical or more variety in them. So I think that's the particular challenge facing 2-player.
So what are some of your favorite 2-player games then?
Well, my favorite game, I prefer to play 2-player. It's 2, 3, I think you can even play up to 5, but I never would. But that's a Matainai, Carl Chudik's game. I think it is my favorite 2-player game, my favorite game, period. Because of the depth in just a small deck of how he put it together. The interactions are so many, and it's so interesting, and it's different every time you play, and the learning curve is so long.
That's going to say it's definitely a learning curve for that one, right?
I've played over 300 times. The learning curve is still going on for me.
Wow, that's
so
impressive.
And of course that doesn't mean you're going to win all the time, because it's a card game and there's a lot of powerful combos going on, which I really love. It was a game made for me. I understand it's an acquired taste with games like that, but I just love it.
That's great.
Love that game.
So, what would you say to new designers starting out? Some words of wisdom.
Well, I get asked that a lot. I mean, a lot of us do around panels and stuff, and if we've been lucky enough to have a couple games that are successful for whatever reason. One thing I don't think there's anything that keeps anybody from making a great game. I don't think experience in making games is necessarily mean that you're going to make a better game than somebody new. In fact, sometimes I think it's more the other way around. So for new designers, I would say two things. One is don't be afraid to try things that have not been done, because it's that fresh idea. We tend to limit ourselves a little bit, and we have to work not to as established designers, because we fall back on things we've learned and stuff. And I think the real beauty of the art of game design is you can pave new paths.
Yeah,
I mean, the second thing I'll say, most everyone starts off designing their game with a lot in it and a lot that's too complicated. That's okay. What you need to do is find out what's fun in the game and basically throw everything else out. Throw as much else out as you can, and your players have fun. And I'm not very good at finding the fun in my games. So I'm pretty good at it with other people's, but I notice that if I watch my playtesters and watch them, or watch people you show the game to, and you will see it. You'll see their eyes light up, and they'll just really have fun in one part of the game. And do not be afraid to say, well, that's the part I'm going to focus on.
Well, that's awesome. So, in closing, you have anything new you can share that you're working on?
I think I can, yes. So I have a fully signed contract, and everything's in place. I have a little card game called Scorecards now. Of course, the title might change. But it's coming out with Pat Nickel at Crash Games at Essen.
All right.
There are several others in the pipeline that I'm not completely signed on yet, so it's a little hard to say. I will drop a little hint. I'm working on the biggest game could have ever imagined working on right now.
That's awesome.
All I'll say is that it's in the general family of Risk Legacy and Pandemic Legacy.
Exciting.
Not the same thing, but these are not easy. As Rob Davio will tell you, I'm at Leacock. We just did a ludology with them, and they gave me some advice on how to simplify the process, and I'm taking it all. But awesome. It's the narrative and storytelling in those games, in this kind of game, it just fascinates me and how people can get immersed. And so I'm determined to see it through. I don't know how successful it'll end up, but I'm trying it.
That's exciting news. We'll definitely look forward to that. Well, Mike, thanks for joining us today.
Well, thank you, Mark.
It's a pleasure to have you here.
Great to be here on the show.
And folks, thanks for joining us as always. And a big thanks to the Haunted Game Cafe for hosting us today. And until next time, we'll see you at the table.
Hey folks, for today's Quirky Game, we are taking a look at a two-player cooperative card game, but a very unorthodox and very unique one. Of course, I am talking about And Then We Held Hands. In this game, both players are attempting to repair their relationship. They are going through some rocky times, and so the game's setting is that you are experiencing emotions, you are discussing emotions, you are, as the game says, dancing around each other until you come to an agreement and meet in the center of the board and win the game. The artwork in the game is really quite gorgeous. As you can see, it is from the same artist who has done the Dixit cards that are loved by everyone. I included. I think it's a gorgeous style. And the gameplay itself is clever. It's very unique, and it's not as quirky or as bizarre as the theme makes it out to be, but when you tie this theme into it, it certainly makes it a very captivating experience. Over many turns, the players are going to be attempting to complete these cards here, and they are going to be moving on the board, which is like a big circle, as you can see, and trying to complete land on these cards and reach that emotion and complete it. You're going to be doing that with these cards here, which are the player cards, and these give you possibilities of play. They're going to be in front of you. They're going to be spread one way or the other, and what I mean by that is that these cards are actually two cards in one, basically. So if you spread them this way, then you get to see one half of the cards. If you spread them the other way, then you get to see another half of the cards. And depending on where you are on the board, depends what you're able to do. You can play your own cards, you can play your opponent's cards. However, in this game you cannot communicate about the game itself. The game encourages you to talk about life, about whatever you want, to really enjoy each other's company. Just do not discuss tactics and strategies as you're sitting at the table. And so you need to be able to read each other's intentions as your cards start to dwindle, because you will not always replenish your cards. You need to be able to know and read that your partner is going to need a specific card to get them out of a jam and have that available for them. And so a very wispy, very gentle little card game. I found it to be really clever, and I found it to be very quirky. It's perhaps going to be a bit of a tough sell for most people, but I think it could make for an interesting game with a significant other, even if, of course, you're not going over any, you're not dealing with any issues in your relationship. This is still something that's very touching, and it's a sweet-looking game, a sweet little game, and it's a bit of a challenge, too. It's a neat co-op game. It's one I recommend just for 2 players. Clever, quirky, and then we held hands. Check it out.
Howdy gamers, it's time once again for Buy, Try, or Deny. I'm Indiana John. Today we're taking a look at couples games or 2-player games, and these are games that I don't actually get to the table very often because I'm usually in a pretty big group of gamers, but my game group does have an annual 2-player only game day where we all get together but then we pair off and just play 2-player games for an entire day. So I'm really looking forward to that. So let's take a look at 3 exclusively 2-player games and see if they are worthwhile to bring to your table for 2. Are you ready? Well, let's do it. I'm not much of a fan of abstract strategy games, so it might be a bit of a surprise that my buy game for this time is The Duke, designed by Jeremy Holcomb and Stephen McLaughlin, produced by Catalyst Games. This is kind of like chess, but not really. It's played on a 6x6 grid, and the goal of the game is to capture your opponent's duke. But the pieces in this game are these really cool wooden squares that have a grid on them that show the movement of each piece on the piece itself. So as you're looking at the board, you can just see immediately how each piece can move. And then after the piece moves, then you're going to flip it over, and on the very back it has a different set of movement rules. So there's a lot of interesting tactics and randomness that get injected into this game by having that. Plus, the board condition is not fixed because you're pulling tiles out of a bag on your turn to add them to the board. So I really, really like it. I don't like to get into the thinkiness of something like chess, but for me, for a 15 to 30 minute abstract strategy experience, you can't do better than The Duke. My try game this time is a bit of a unicorn in the gaming world. That's the 2-player trick-taking game, and I'm talking about Triumvirate, designed by Travis Worthington and produced by Indie Boards and Cards. This is a very interesting game where you have 3 suits, 3 different colors, and you're not so much trying to win tricks for yourself as you're trying to influence which colors win in each hand, because whichever color wins 3 hands is going to determine which cards score at the end of the game. And during the middle of the game, you're going to be pledging or kind of betting, setting aside cards of a particular color, hoping that they're going to be the ones that score for you at the end of the game. But the interesting thing is that as you take those cards out of the equation during that betting phase, you're also making it more difficult for that color to win tricks. So it's a very interesting sort of indirect strategy, a very subtle sort of strategy of trying to influence what's going on in the game. And that's why it's a try for me, because it is not a real straightforward game, and it might take a couple of plays to sort of figure out what you're doing. But I find it to be highly enjoyable, and it's very rare to find a 2-player trick-taking game. This is a very, very solid game. I think it might be out of print, so apologies if you can't find it, but if you're able to get your hand on a copy of it, I'd recommend giving a try to Triumvirate. Alright, so my deny game this time is really hard for me because it's designed by one of my favorite designers of all time, Stefan Feld. And I'm talking about Pillars of the Earth Builder's Duel. This is a game where you're sort of racing each other to build a cathedral in pieces, and you're claiming resource cards by using this sort of coin placement mechanic with these cardboard coins. And then there's going to be one card every round that is contested, and you flip these coins in order to gain that card. And I just don't like any games that have a coin flip mechanic to them. I just don't like it. I don't think it's that much fun. I can never get my fingers under the thing right. Just give me some dice. If you want to randomize something, give me some dice to roll, and I'll be perfectly happy. I just sort of felt like this was a mechanic that was just thrown in as a novelty, but it didn't really add anything to the game. I just thought it was kind of dry and just not very much fun. So sorry, Mr. Feld. I love all of your games, but not this one. So that's my deny. Pillars of the Earth Builders Duel. Well, there you have it. 3 exclusively 2-player games. Our deny game, Pillars of the Earth Builders Duel. Our try game, Triumvirate. And our excellent buy game, The Duke. So, what game do you like to bring to your table for 2? Let me know in the comments or tweet it to me at IndieBoardGamer. So, until next time, game on!
Hey there, I'm John from JonGetsGames, and today we're talking about 2-player games. Now, there are games that play 2-player only, and there are lots of games that play 2 or more players. I've got a whole bunch of 2-player only games that kind of dominate this section of my wall, but today I want to talk about Pandemic Legacy. Even though it's not a 2-player only game, it plays 2 to 4 players, and I know people have talked about this game to death, and I'm not going to spoil anything or anything like that. I want to talk about it specifically as a 2-player experience, and even more specifically as a couples experience. I've been playing the game with my wife, and there have been several moments while I'm playing the game where I realize I'm really glad I'm only playing this game with one other person as opposed to more, and I'm going to try and sell you on that fact now. So the first thing is just logistics. In this game, you want to play with the same people every single time, and the game can play between 12 and 24 games, so that is quite a few to potentially try to logisticate getting 4 people, the same 4 people into a room at the same time. You know, somebody might be sick, somebody's working, somebody doesn't show up. It'll be harder to do that, but if you're playing it with a significant other, especially one you live with, it's much easier to find that time in just an evening when just both the two of you are wanting to play it. The other thing to think about is this game kind of combines your traditional cooperative experience with that experience of sitting on the couch and just binge watching a show on Netflix. Because you have the cooperative game, it's pandemic, you're doing all sorts of pandemic-y things, but it also has a story that unfolds as you play the game more and more. So when you finish the game, you want to play it again because it was a fun game, but you also really want to play it again because you want to know what happens next. It's the reason you're like 4 episodes in an evening, you're like, let's just watch one more. We got to see what happens with that cliffhanger, and this game has that same feeling. So I strongly recommend you consider playing Pandemic Legacy in general, and I also strongly recommend you play it with 2 players. I'm sure it's great with 4, but I've really enjoyed it with 2, and also just as a note, we've been playing it with 4 characters total, 2 per player, and we really have not had a hard time keeping all that stuff in our head. So heartily recommend it, and I hope you give it a shot.
Hey folks, welcome back to another episode of Board Game Blender, and thank you for joining me for my segment, Real Talk with Sam. Now, today, this episode, we're talking about 2-player games. It's just the 2 of us. You know, happy Valentine's Day and all that kind of stuff. More like happy fictitious holiday that was created by the greeting card company so that they could bolster their sales for this fiscal quarter of the year. Well, that's my curmudgeon segment of the day, but hey, we're talking about games that play well with 2 players or that work are 2-player games. That's kind of where I went today. 2-player games are something that my wife and I have enjoyed over the years, and I know somebody else is taking care of the Cosmos games, so there's a lot of those. 3 of them actually that I'm looking at on my shelf right over there that we have enjoyed over the years, so I'll let them talk about that though. I will say that I do have 3 other games here that have worked well for my wife and I in the past as just real quick back and forth games that we both have enjoyed very much. And so the first one here is this guy right here, Neuroshima Hex Convoy, or just Convoy. And it's a really fast 2-player game. The theme is not very Valentine's-y-ish, day-ish, but you know, it still is a very fun game. It's a simple game to play. So it's a game that we can just sit down and kind of relax and play together. You don't have to put a whole lot of thought into it. And that's one of the things we really enjoyed about it. It still has enough thinking necessary to be engaging and fulfilling, but it's still very light. Neuroshima Hex Convoy. Go ahead and check that out. Or Neuroshima Convoy. Sorry. The next one is this guy right here, Bang the Duel. Now, one of the first games that we really started enjoying together in a group was Bang, the card game. And then Bang the Dice game came out, and we played out with our family on a pretty regular basis, and then we also play it with youth group as well. This, however, takes the feeling of all those games and smushes it down into a two-player experience. It does have a little bit of clutchiness to it, but at the same time, it is good back and forth, and it's one of those games where you really can't determine who the winner is going to be. You can definitely feel like you're in the winner spot, but then one round happens, and it all just kind of goes out the window. So, pretty quick, two-player game, Western themed. Go check this one out, Bang the Duel. And then my favorite two-player game right now is this little fella right here, Raptor. It is from Bruno Fedudi and Bruno Cathala, and boy oh boy do I enjoy playing this game. It has just a whole lot of back and forth, really simple mechanics of playing a card, flipping it over, and seeing which happens. The higher numbered card is the one that's going to be able to do actions on the board. The lower numbered card is going to be able to do their special ability that card gives them the ability to do. One player is the scientist trying to capture and run tests in order to run tests on these baby raptors that are running around. And then the other player is the family of raptors that are trying to protect their babies and get them to safety. And hey, if we munch on a couple scientists on the way, fine. It does take some pretty clever card play and board play in order to win this game. So a two-player game that I highly recommend to anybody wanting to get into the two-player genre with their family and that type of thing. I think this one hits home every single time. So that's Raptor by Bruno Cathala and Bruno Fedudi. Go check it out. And hey, that's it for my segment. And remember, I'm just trying to keep it real, y'all. See you on the flip side.
Hey guys, what's going on? I'm Roy Canday, and this is From Easy to Epic, where we talk about an easy game with more of a focus on the beginner, and then we talk about a more epic game with a focus on the advanced player. This week is all about two-player games on the Blend, and the first game we're going to be talking about today is Summoner Wars.
Summoner Wars is a competitive two-player game where each player takes the role of a summoner trying to defeat their opponent's summoner to win the game. Each turn, players will summon units, play event cards, move their units, attack with units, and build magic. Attacks in Summoner Wars are resolved by rolling dice. A roll of 3 or higher counts as a hit, which will cause wounds on your opponent's units. If you defeat an opponent's units, you will move that unit to your magic pile to be used as resources. The main goal in Summoner Wars is to take out your opponent's summoner by dealing wounds equal to the hit points printed on their card. To best your opponent, you'll have to outmaneuver them tactically, utilize your special abilities of your faction, and manage your magic resources. With the multitude of factions that Plaid Hat has put out for Summoner Wars, the games always feel new and interesting with varieties of strategies. You can start out in Summoner Wars by getting one of the starter sets, which have 2 factions each, or the Master set, which has 6 factions. Last year, Plaid Hat came out with Summoner Wars Alliances, which has 8 allied factions.
One of the things I really like about Summoner Wars is how easy it is to learn and teach for new players. The game has enough luck in it so that the dice rolls make the game exciting, but there's also tons of tactical decisions as you're moving your units around the board, and it feels a lot like a miniatures game in card game form. It also has a little bit of hand management, which is a lot of fun too. So if you're looking for a light little summoner versus summoner, casting spells and summoning units to the board game, check out Summoner Wars. The next game we're going to talk about is our more epic game, and that game is War of the Ring 2nd Edition.
War of the Ring is a competitive two-player thematic war game where one player is the Fellowship who is trying to destroy the ring at Mount Doom, and the other player is the Shadow player who is trying to capture and besiege strongholds. Players take turns using action dice to move characters and armies on the board, play event cards, and muster units. The Shadow player always has to balance how much he is rallying his units to besiege strongholds with how much he is searching for the ring. If the Fellowship player is able to get Frodo and Sam to the cracks of doom without Frodo becoming corrupted, they win the game. Correctly utilizing your action dice and unlocking your special characters to add more to your pool are essential for both sides. War of the Ring is full of huge epic battles and exciting event cards which feel thematic at every turn. Will the free people be able to cast the ring into the fire, or will the Dark Lord cover Middle-earth in a second darkness? War of the Ring is my all-time favorite two-player game. I love how it feels like you're playing through the story of Lord of the Rings, as the Fellowship is inching towards Mordor, trying to get to Mount Doom and throw the ring in before the Dark player power covers the land in orcs and Uruk-hai, and there's just all these people everywhere, and you're trying to hold on to those strongholds as they're being besieged and just holding on, and there's only a fool's hope left, and you're replaying the story in your own adventures with things slightly tweaked and different in your gameplay, depending on how the cards come out. It makes the game new and exciting each time you play. So if you're looking for a little bit meatier of a war game that's very thematic and feels like Lord of the Rings in a box, make sure to check out War of the Ring. Thanks so much, guys, for checking us out. This has been From Easy to Epic. We'll see you guys next time. Make sure to check us out then.
And that, ladies and gentlemen, wraps up our It Takes Two episode. I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope you found some new games you maybe were not aware of, something to try out with that significant other, or with just a good gaming partner. As always, thank you to all my contributors, and hey, we'll see you again in a couple of weeks, so stay in front of the blend. I'll see you.